There was a big event a few months ago that completely changed how I think about the spiritual world and what is good and evil. My name is Isabella Simmons, and I'm 38 years old. I work as a trauma nurse in a busy emergency room in Los Angeles. I've been married to David for years, and our daughter Maya is 6 years old. It was Friday night, and I was working the night shift in the emergency room. There had been a multi-car accident on the freeway, and people were quickly coming in hurt. I was helping a very sick patient when another ambulance arrived. As I rushed to help the new patient, I slipped on a pool of blood on the floor and fell backward, hitting my head hard on the corner of a metal supply card. The last thing I remember is how painful it was and how worried my co-workers were. I later learned that I had suffered a severe traumatic brain injury. My brain swelled up a lot after the impact, so I had to go through emergency surgery right away. During the surgery, my heart stopped for almost minutes before the doctors were able to start beating again. But during those minutes, I went through something I could never have imagined. Something that changed. It's hard to describe, but I'll do my best. The first thing I remember is a deep sense of peace. The pain and chaos of the emergency room went away, and I felt like I was floating on air. I was in a place of unimaginable beauty and light, and I felt drawn to a bright light that was unlike anything I've ever seen. It was brighter than the sun, but it wasn't harsh or blinding. It gave off warmth. As I looked around, I saw a figure coming toward me. As it got closer, I realized it was Jesus. I know that sounds crazy, but I had no doubt in my mind that he was who he said he was. His presence was filled with love and wisdom in a way that's hard to explain. He greeted me by name and said, "You've arrived earlier than expected, but there's something important I need to show you before you go." I was speechless in his presence, but I managed to ask, "Are you not going to stay?" Jesus asked with a soft smile. "Not yet, Isabella. Your work on earth isn't done. But what I'm about to show you will help you understand the true nature of the battle you're part of." Jesus made it clear that this was only a short visit. Suddenly, the scene around us changed. We were no longer in that place of peace and light. We were in what I can only describe as heaven, but it was so much more beautiful and glorious than our world. They were all singing praises and giving off light. The music was unlike anything I've ever heard on earth. It sounded like joy and love had been turned into sound. Jesus pointed out one angel in particular. It was more beautiful and radiant than the others. Its light shone brighter, and its voice led the heavenly choir in the most beautiful harmony. Jesus told me, "This is Lucifer as he used to be. Watch carefully, because few people have ever seen what I'm about to show you." Lucifer was magnificent. It's hard to describe how beautiful he was. He seemed to be covered in what looked like precious gems, like emeralds, rubies, and diamonds, and they reflected light in dazzling patterns. His wings were huge and shimmered with every color you can imagine. But it wasn't just how he looked. He had a charisma that drew everyone to him when he sang. As Jesus spoke, I felt like the very fabric of heaven shook with his voice. He told me that Lucifer was the highest of the angels and the most perfect creation. He was the guardian of God's throne and the leader of the angelic host. In worship, Jesus said Lucifer was the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. It's hard to imagine how such a being could fall, and it broke my heart to see him become corrupt. At first, the change was subtle. I saw Lucifer start to admire his own reflection in the golden streets of heaven. He seemed to stare at himself for a long time. Jesus told me, "Watch," because I was seeing the birth of pride. I then saw him compare himself to other angels, and his face changed slightly with each comparison. Jesus told me that pride was taking root in Lucifer's heart. He forgot that his beauty and talents were gifts from God. It was like I could see his thoughts. He was thinking, "Why should I bow to anyone? I'm the most beautiful and talented." I should be worshipped. I should be obeyed. Jesus told me that pride is the source of all sin. It's what changes love for others into love for self-gratitude, entitlement, service, and dominance. I saw Lucifer start to try to get the other angels' attention. He would make his songs and movements more complicated, as if he were performing for an audience instead of leading worship. I also saw him start to whisper to other angels. Jesus told me that Lucifer is sowing doubt by suggesting that God is keeping something from the angels that they deserve more. A lot of the other angels were swayed by his words, like, "Don't you think we deserve more? We're so powerful and beautiful. Why should we worship God? Why can't we be gods ourselves?" I could see confusion and doubt spreading among the angels. Some fought back, but others were drawn in by Lucifer's vision of equality with God. Jesus told me that free will is like a double-edged sword. It can lead to love and devotion, but it can also lead to rejection and rebellion. It was shocking to see how well he was being used to turn other angels against God. Lucifer was very convincing and charismatic. He would ask questions that seemed innocent at first, but were really meant to make people unhappy. For example, he would ask, "Have you ever thought about why God keeps the tree of knowledge for himself? Don't you think we deserve to have that knowledge too? Or, why should we bow to humans? Aren't we greater than they are?" One of the most profound parts of the vision was seeing how sad God was. Jesus told me that our Father's heart is breaking because he loves Lucifer and all the angels so much, but love requires free will. Everyone, even in heaven, has the choice to love and obey God or not. I saw God reach out to Lucifer many times, giving him chances to change his mind, but Lucifer's pride kept him from doing so each time. I saw Lucifer gather his followers. About a third of the angels seemed to have changed their minds because of his arguments. He stood in front of God's throne and said, "I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." As soon as he said those words, there was a big change. The light that had been coming from Lucifer started to fade, and I could see darkness creeping into his being. Then there was a bright flash, and Michael, another archangel, appeared with a group of loyal angels. Jesus said, "Now there was war in heaven." The war in heaven was unlike any battle I could have imagined. There were no physical weapons, but I saw streams of light clashing with encroaching darkness. The loyal angels led by Michael were pushing back Lucifer and his followers. But what broke my heart was seeing Lucifer and the rebellious angels change as they fought against God's will. Their forms started to twist and corrupt, and their once beautiful light was being eaten up by darkness. Took Lucifer and his followers to the edge of heaven, and then, in an instant I'll never forget, they were thrown out. I saw Lucifer fall like a star being thrown from the sky. He showed me that God wanted a real relationship with his creation, giving all beings, including Luce Lurker, the real chance to choose evil was the price of free will, Jesus said. Our Father knew the price when he gave this gift. He knew it would cause unimaginable pain, even the death of his own son. But he also knew that the love that would come from free choice would be worth it all. This was one of the most mind-blowing parts of my vision. Jesus taught me that God's plan was much bigger and more beautiful than just stopping evil. He let the rebellion happen because he had a plan to bring about an even greater good. Through it, I saw how this plan was playing out in history and how God was working to change the very nature of creation through this battle with evil. The end goal wasn't just to defeat Satan, but to raise up beings who had faced evil and chosen good, who knew the cost of love and freely chose it. Jesus also told me that through this struggle, humans have the chance to grow into something that not even angels fully understand. As a result, I now see our lives on earth as a crucible, a place where we're being refined and changed. Every choice we make and every struggle we face is a chance to grow in love and become more like Christ. I also understood better why God doesn't just get rid of evil right away. He's playing a long game, so to speak. The goal isn't just to destroy evil, but to create beings who have faced evil, seen how empty it is, and freely chosen love instead. The idea of eternal punishment or hell was one of the hardest parts of my vision to understand. Jesus showed me that hell isn't so much a place that God sends people to, but a state of being that comes from rejecting love and choosing self-centeredness. I saw how Lucifer's choice to reject God led to a kind of self-imposed exile. The darkness that consumed him wasn't something that was done to him from the source of all light and love. Jesus said that what you call hell is the final permanent state of people who, like Lucifer, choose self-love over love in the end. It's not a punishment from God. It's the natural result of their choices. Jesus gave me a complicated answer when I asked if Lucifer or the fallen angels could be saved. He showed me that the offer of salvation is always open because God's love never ends. But because angels are different from humans, once they make a choice, it's final in a way that ours aren't. Jesus said that angels, including Lucifer, made their choices knowing everything there was to know. They weren't fooled or acting out of ignorance. Their rejection of love was absolute and couldn't be undone by their nature. As long as we live, there is still a chance for redemption. Jesus showed me that every person's life is a series of choices that lead either to or away from love. The final judgment is really the revelation of the choice we've been making the whole time. I didn't expect it to be this easy or that hard to resist temptation and avoid Lucifer's fate. It's important to work on being humble and loving others. Pride led to Lucifer's downfall and is still his main weapon against us. Jesus taught me that being truly humble doesn't mean thinking less of myself, but rather recognizing our dependence on God and our connection with others. It means being thankful for what we have, instead of being angry about what we don't have. Love, on the other hand, makes us less self-centered when we focus on loving God and others. During our time together, Jesus showed me how small acts of love can strengthen our relationship with God and weaken the power of darkness in our lives. He then told me it was time for me to return. He said to remember what I had seen and share it with others to help them understand the spiritual world and how important it is to avoid pride. He put his hand on my forehead, and I felt a huge wave of love and peace. The next thing I knew, I was back in my body, gasping for air as the surgical team worked frantically around me. I've always thought of myself as a Christian, but now my faith is so much stronger and more real. I know that every choice we make and every thought we have is part of a bigger spiritual reality. I'm much more aware of my own pride when I think I'm better than others, or that I deserve special treatment. I remember Lucifer's fall and how pride tainted even the most perfect angel, but more than that, I try to focus on strengthening those connections of love that I saw. I reach out to others to pray for them to do acts of kindness. I want to build up those strands of light speaking of darkness. Seeing Lucifer's fall helped me understand Satan's methods better. Just like in heaven, Satan often works by sneaky lies. He doesn't always come across as a bad guy. Sometimes he seems like something good or reasonable. I saw how patient and smart he can be in heaven. He worked slowly, sowing doubt and dissatisfaction over time. As he fell, the last of his angelic beauty burned off, and he turned into a dark creature. Satan, the enemy Jesus told me. You just saw how the great dragon, that ancient serpent known as the devil and Satan, the world's liar, was thrown down. Jesus then told me, I've shown you this for several reasons. First, I want you to understand the true nature of evil. Satan wasn't born evil. He chose to reject love and embrace pride. He then said, Second, I want you to understand the power of free will, even the most perfect. If given the chance, every being can make the wrong choice. This is why faith, humility, and love are so important. Finally, Jesus told me, I want you to see what happens when you are proud. Pride is the root of all sin, and it can ruin even the most beautiful things my Father made. He then led me to what looked like the edge of heaven, where I could see the earth below. What amazed me was that I could see thin lines of light connecting people to heaven and to each other. Then Jesus showed me how Lucifer's fall changed the earth. I saw darkness spreading around the world, and I could see thin, dark tendrils trying to catch on to people. Jesus told me that these were the enemy's works. Temptation, doubt, and fear were all trying to keep people from God and from each other. But then he showed me something beautiful. Strands of light connecting people to heaven and to each other. Jesus said these are the connections of love. Every act of kindness, every prayer meeting, and every worship service strengthen these connections. What I saw was like a wave of darkness spreading across the earth after Lucifer and his followers were thrown out of heaven. It was like the rebellion had let evil into the real world. I saw how this darkness often tried to attach itself to people. In subtle ways, a whispered doubt here, a temptation there, but I also saw how human choices could either strengthen or weaken these dark influences. Jesus explained to me that this is the essence of spiritual warfare, not some grand cosmic battle, but the small choices we make every day to either align ourselves with God's love or give in to selfishness and pride. How we can protect ourselves from these dark influences is simpler than you might think. The key is to cultivate humility and love. Pride is what caused Lucifer's fall, and it's still his main weapon against us. By choosing humility, recognizing our dependence on God and our interconnectedness with others, we close the door to many of Satan's tactics. Actively choosing to love others and do good strengthens our connection to God and to each other. I saw how these acts of love created strands of light that the darkness couldn't penetrate. Prayer is also crucial. It's not just about asking for things, but about aligning our will with God's and strengthening our relationship with Him. I did observe the angels who remained faithful, and it was truly inspiring. What struck me most was their unwavering focus on God. While Lucifer and his followers became more focused on themselves, the loyal angels stayed focused on their true purpose and source of beauty. Jesus told me that these angels were true examples of humility because they knew that all of their gifts from God were not things to brag about. When Lucifer tried to tempt them with promises of more power or knowledge, they responded with gratitude for what they already had. I also noticed that the loyal angels seemed to have a deeper understanding of love. They found joy in serving God and each other instead of seeking attention or status. This selfless love protected them from Lucifer's attempts to appeal to pride and self-interest. Jesus showed me glimpses of how these angels interact with our world. They act as messengers and protectors, often in ways we can't see. I saw them strengthening the lines of light that connect people to God and each other. What amazed me was how much they loved people, even though they were much stronger and smarter than us. They didn't look down on or hurry people, and instead seemed to enjoy every little step of our spiritual growth. Jesus told me that these faithful ones know how important free will is and respect the journey each person must take, offering guidance but never controlling your vision. It broke my heart to see Jesus show me how Lucifer's rebellion sent ripples through all of creation, bringing death and decay where there had once been only life and growth. All of creation was changed when sin entered the world. This is why natural disasters happen and animals hurt each other. But even in this, I saw hope. Jesus showed me that creation itself longs for redemption. I saw how acts of love and obedience to God could push back the darkness, not just in people's hearts, but in the world around us. I think He does the same thing in our world, slowly eroding people's faith or moral foundations. But the most important thing I learned is that Satan is a created being, not God's exact opposite. He can tempt and trick people, but he can't make them sin. We always have a choice. Yes, Jesus did talk more about how Satan works in the world. He told me that Satan's main tool is deception. Just like he fooled himself into thinking he was equal to God, he now wants to fool people. Jesus showed me how Satan and his fallen angels, who are now demons, twist the truth to make bad things look good and good things look bad. They tell lies, stir up pride and anger, and try to turn people away from God and each other. I saw moments in human history when pride, greed, and the desire for power led to terrible crimes. But I also saw how acts of love, sacrifice, and faith fought back against the darkness. Jesus told me that the battle you saw in heaven is still going on earth, but not with swords and armies from heaven, but in the hearts and minds of all people. Jesus did show me glimpses of the future, but he made it clear that these were possibilities, not set events. His explanation of the future is based on the choices people make in response to God's love. I understood that the ultimate goal of history is for everything to be made right with God, but the way there could be slow and peaceful, or it could be full of chaos and pain, depending on what people choose. You can be sure that love will win in the end, but the path you take there is up to your free choices as my children. Each act of love speeds up the day when everything will be made new. I did see glimpses of these events, but they were more mental than physical. I saw Christ's return more as an opening of reality, as if the spiritual realm suddenly became visible to everyone, showing what everything was really like. For me, the judgment wasn't like a trial in the usual sense. Instead, it was more like a final showing of each person's true nature, shaped by the choices they had made throughout their lives. Those who had grown in love and connection naturally gravitated toward God, while those who had chosen self-centeredness couldn't handle the brightness of divine love. Jesus told me that the judgment is not something I force on people, but the final result of their choice to accept love or reject it. I learned that true, humble love is the most powerful force in the universe. It's what keeps everything together and gives life meaning. Lucifer fell because he turned away from love and toward himself. We rise when we turn toward love and away from ourselves. I also learned that every choice matters. We're all part of a cosmic drama that's bigger than we can imagine, but we don't have to do big things to be a part of it. Making small choices every day to love, be kind, and choose humility over pride is how we align ourselves with God's plans. Finally, I learned that no matter how bad things look, love will win in the end, not through force or coercion, but through the free choices of those who know love's supreme value. We can all be a part of that victory by weaving threads of light into the tapestry of creation.